All right, so I'm working on the 486 VLB project, and we got the board booting. We have a VLB graphics card right there, and we also have a VLB IDE controller right here. And a few options on which case to use. So the bottom case is just a generic, I think it's a 286 case. And the middle case is missing the whole front bezel. And the top case caught my interest because it's got a pretty sleek front interface. But I don't have anything to fill these drive bays, so that may be something I would have to source online. It's for like those old large format hard drives and 5 1/4 bays. This almost looks like an IBM, but I don't think it is. And then I also had a really tall old case with a turbo button on it, and the power button is missing. I had something just screwed in there all half-assed, and because of that I kind of shied away from this giant case. So I think we're gonna actually take this one for the project. So I'm gonna get it opened up, see if the old switching power supply still activates and works. Taking a closer look at this case, it's actually in really good condition. It has everything you need in here. As long as this power supply works, it's 150 watts, which is plenty for an old build like this. And it's got all the rails for mounting a small motherboard. It even has a PC speaker that doesn't even look like it's bad, even though it's got some sort of proprietary connector on there that's not going to fit a standard board. I have to check the motherboard on that one. But let's clean this thing up. Actually, I'm just going to test the power supply, and then if that works, we'll go from there. So the only information on this case, it says MPAC International Corp XT computer, serial number 501104. Get quite a bit of cat hair on here, and years of dust and debris, and some rusty screws. But all in all, it's a pretty solid case. It still has all of its feet, and I think it's going to clean up pretty nice. All right, I just took the 4 screws out of the power supply here because I'm obviously going to have to clean this case. Oh, there we go. Void if removed. We're obviously going to have to remove you. A little bit of corrosion on the input 120 volt side here. So we're going to have to clean that up with a wire brush and some alcohol. All right, I switched out my bench power supply for the one out of the case to see if it works. Now this is probably going to let out smoke, but hopefully it does not. Let's flip this old satisfying power switch in the back. Wow, it's spinning. Oh my god, it's booting. All right, so we're looking good. Power supply works. We have a case, we have a video card, we have a floppy, an IDE controller card. Now we just need to get this thing assembled. I have to open up that power supply and do a little cleaning, at least at bare minimum. Let's see what's in there. There we go. Warranty void. Can't return it to Best Buy now. Jeez. I'm actually impressed. This thing has aged extremely well. You can tell they just made things better back in the day. There's no capacitor plague issues. There's no problems here. All I have to do is clean this thing up, de-dustify it, and get this thing back in action. I don't see anything wrong. All right, we got the power supply all cleaned up. Just have this little bit of surface rust I did try to scrub off with some Microban 24, but that's the best I was going to get it. So we get the thing all clean. I did clean the corrosion off the terminals right here. I'm going to get a little better with some alcohol. I have to just go grab some from upstairs. And let's move on to the case. All right, we got the internal part of the case fairly cleaned up. We cleaned up the underside as well. Now we just need to clean the outside of the case, the important part. All right, I flipped the case over and cleaned out the inside real quick. Now it's time to see how bad the yellow faded stuff is in the front. Well, it looks a little rough, but let's let this Microband 24 sit in for a minute. This case is pretty dirty. It could be worse, I guess. Just for the sheer fact that it's complete and not missing anything except for the two front drives. Kind of makes it a winner in my book. All right, time to throw the power supply back in. Got the case pretty cleaned up. Took out all the spare drive rails and cleaned it even further. Now let's just line this power supply back in here. There we go. All right, so I'm getting the board sized up into the case. And unfortunately, it looks like there's only 2 mounting spots that are actually going to support the board, and they're on the very outside edge. So that means we have that one spot there, and then this middle spot right here. And there's nothing to grab any of those on the case. And then these 2 outer supports here don't have anything to grab either. I'm gonna have to do something here. All right, so I have the 2 outer feet that have the actual locks, and then these 2 inner feet right here, I cut the locks off so they would sit on top of the rail. And now I just need to find some sort of a screw here and a standoff that's gonna go down to the case to lock the board in place. Normally that would happen right here, but there's no threaded hole here. And on the case, there's actually a hole for this, but I'm just gonna have to put some sort of a standoff in there to get it to lock into place. All right, it took some finagling, but we got some hardware in there. You can see I got a spot to screw it down now. And we have supports in all 6 spots holding it in place. These ones are holding it down to the bottom of the case. And everything is firm. And this one is locking it into the rail. And these ones are just sitting on top of the rail. So I can get this thing screwed in, and we are ready to get to the next step of the project. And good thing this is a 486 SX, because there's no room for a heat sink. So luckily we don't need one. An old socket 3, we shouldn't put off too much heat. All right, we plugged in the XT connectors to power the motherboard. And now we can start adding our peripheral cards. Well, I was flipping through my parts bin and I found this, looks like a 5 1/4 blank spacer. And it's got that matte finish. It actually looks like it may have came out of this computer. So at the very least, I can probably pop this in one of the spots and maybe populate another drive above it. It does kind of look like that belongs to this case. I wish I had another one, because that would solve my issue. I doubt I'm going to be able to find one of those on the internet. Thing is ancient. But it's starting to look like a computer, guys. So I'm looking around for drives that may work in this computer, and I just found this sweet little guy. It's a 3.5 floppy, and it has some sort of a daughter board that's making it the old pin style connector instead of the newer IDE. And what do you know, it's a Sony. Look at that. MP F17W-T7 SMM, made in Malaysia. All right, so I think I'm gonna mount the drives like this. I'll have the spacer down here, and I'll have the 3.5 floppy right up here, which leaves this entire bay open for a hard drive. I'm not gonna be running one of those giant hard drives. I'll probably be running just like a regular 3.5 hard drive. I do have quite a few old hard drives. So oddly enough, to mount the drives on the bottom of this computer, you actually have to screw them from underneath. And if you see, there's a giant hole in the bottom of the case in both spots. So you gotta flip the case up on its side and screw in these bottom drives. All right, we have these drives in and supported. Things are looking good. Well, I'm flipping through my pile of junk, and I did find this. This is the right color, and it has that same matte finish. I'm not sure if this is supposed to be some sort of hard drive cover. It's got these two little supports in the back. So I could mount that there somehow, and then I just need one more filler plate. I'm not sure what to do there yet. This is my motherboard wall. Up top there's some really old vintage boards. Some 286, 386, 486 Pentium. And we have some Celeron. And this whole second row is basically Dell boards. They're all mostly Pentium 4s. Okay, so we have the computer migrated over to our test bench, and we need to throw some cards in this thing once and for all and plug this thing in and see if we can get it firing up. All right, so the first card we have going in the system is the Cirrus Logic VLB video card. It's 1 megabyte. It's not the fanciest VLB card out there, but I was able to obtain it very cheap on Facebook Marketplace, so let's get this thing slapped in the computer. The next card going in is our UMC IDE floppy controller. All right, well, I got those two main cards secured, and I also put a blank in between them because I'm not gonna be running anything on that third VLB. I'm just gonna leave a little space between the cards, just in case. So now we can populate the floppy IDE and the hard drive. Notice how these 12-volt power lines are exactly the right length to get to where it needs to be, and there's no extra cable sitting around. They really thought of everything back then. Spare no expense. All right, floppy cable installed. Now let's work on the hard drive, the IDE. Well, I'm not sure if this is gonna work. It's an old Seagate from Thailand, 261.3 megabytes. And look at all these botch wires. Somebody was under a microscope making this thing work. Glued it down all nice. So let's see if we can get this thing to initiate or identify. I'll probably have to put all the parameters into the BIOS. And if it does not work, we'll switch to one of these Connors. Okay, so we have the Seagate hard drive installed. I'm just gonna have it resting out here right now in a safe spot where it's not gonna vibrate away. All right, we are ready to go. This is the first power on. I have no mouse hooked up, but I have the keyboard, the power, and the video. Let's see if this thing posts and see if I can get into BIOS. I am scared. Come on, work, work, work. Okay. Oh my God, it's working. Yes. Look at that, Cirrus Logic, the VLB card's working. It's counting the memory. Oh, this is awesome. All right, I can sit down. Hit delete if you want to run setup. Let's press delete. So it'll enter that. CMOS battery failed, of course, because I unsoldered it from the board. I need to put a new battery in there too, but there's another issue with that. This was one of those Varta batteries. It's like a 3.6 NiCad or nickel cadmium. And the board actually puts out voltage to it to charge it. So I can't just switch it over to a coin cell battery or AA's, because you need some sort of diode in the circuit so it doesn't feed back to the batteries and try to charge unchargeable batteries. On another note, this Seagate hard drive sounds really good. Let's get a nice spin to it. All right, so I switched out the IDE cable and I flipped around the ribbon on the floppy, and the light is not on the floppy, so that's a good thing. So let's get back into BIOS here in another hour after waiting for this memory count. Really need to figure out this battery situation so I don't have to keep setting this. In a perfect world, I want it to auto detect the hard drive, so let's see if it'll do that. Auto detection in progress. Because we know if it picks it up automatically, then there's nothing wrong with this floppy controller. Doesn't look like it is detecting the hard drive though. And when I flip around the hard drive cable, the system doesn't even boot. So something's going on with this controller. All right, we're finally getting somewhere. I just tried new cables and I put a different floppy in just to make sure that that's not the problem. But look at this, I have this long dirty IDE cable here and it auto detected the drive. So I must have two bad IDE cables. So at least we got the hard drive detected. I did take out the VLB IDE controller card and I cleaned it with alcohol and put it back in. So look at that. Let's save yes to the parameters on the hard drive. All right, I got my DOS disks. It's 6.22, so it's not exactly period correct, but I want it to be as current as possible. Oh my God. We are starting MS-DOS, guys. This is good. Hard drive's making crackling noises. I have a feeling this computer is going to be so slow, I'm not even going to be able to play Doom on it. It's going to be like the fireballs are coming so slow. Please wait. Setup is checking your system configuration. All right, look at that. We can enter to continue. We're probably going to have to setup cannot install because your computer is already running a version of DOS. This version of setup is designed for computers that do not yet have an operating system. Well, let's see what's on this hard drive. Apparently something. Let's see here. C drive. Nothing found. There we go. We have Windows. This version of Windows does not run on MS-DOS 6.x or earlier. Oh, it's Windows 95. Look at that. Well, I'm not sure if this is gonna run on 25 megahertz. That is crazy. This old 261 megabyte Seagate has Windows 95 on it. That's funny. It's gonna take an hour to load. Well, there you have it, folks. 486 VLB SX 25 megahertz running Windows 95. Who would have thought? I guess I'm going to try to hook a mouse up to this thing, see what's on this hard drive, and then I may end up just formatting it and probably putting DOS on this. I'm not really sure you're going to get much use out of this. Maybe I could put Windows 3.1 on here. I don't know. I got to think about this.